What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we are talking about buy low and sell high players. In case you guys are new here, buy low players are players that are underperforming, who I expect to bounce back, meaning that you probably could get a pretty good discount on them in a deal. And sell high players are players who I think are overperforming, guys that I think are going to cool down, and you might want to capitalize on their increased value in a trade. With that being said, I do want to talk about one thing before we get into these players, starting off with the Shea Theodore injury. As you guys know, if you've been watching the Four Nations face-off against Sweden, Theodore, he was pushing to the boards. His wrist hit the boards. He left the game, wasn't able to return, and we got the confirmation that he was not going to return to the tournament, and now he is designated out week to week. That is the only official update that we have of Theodore, but Elliot Friedman reported that the official timeline, or the timeline that he's hearing of, is closer to the playoffs. So there's a chance that Theodore is out until game one of the playoffs. This has massive fantasy implications because Theodore is the quarterback for Power Play 1, and now there's going to be a new defenseman on this unit. The two defensemen that are going to be candidates for this spot on the top unit are going to be Alex Pietrangelo and Noah Hanifin. Pietrangelo has been Power Play 1 in the past on Vegas, but he has lost it to Theodore as of late in the last 2 or 3 years. And last year as well, with Hanifin coming in, Hanifin, when he was traded from the Flames to Vegas, was quarterbacking the Power Play 1 for the rest of the year last year, and also throughout the playoffs. So just based on that, I would assume that it would be Hanifin. Both of them are currently on Power Play 2, and they're getting roughly the same Power Play time per game. But based on what we saw last season, I would expect it to be Hanifin being the new Power Play 1 quarterback. Another thing to consider as well is that Pietrangelo pulled out of Four Nations due to an ailment that he was suffering. There's a chance that Pietrangelo is not fully healthy, and with that in mind, I don't know if Vegas wants to give him extra minutes every game by putting him on Power Play 1. In conclusion, I expect Hanifin to now be on Power Play 1. Definitely worth a look if he is available on your wire. And yeah, I mean, he's going to see a fantasy bump if he's getting Power Play 1. His ice time is going to go up. He's going to have that Power Play point potential. And if Theodore is out for the rest of the year, then Hanifin is definitely going to be solid for the rest of the season. We also have a few more updates I wanted to mention here, starting off with Charlie McAvoy. He is out week to week after an injury to his AC joint turned into an infection. We don't know the exact timeline, but his designation is week to week, like I said. So that is what we're dealing with. And with him being out, that means Mason Lohrei sees a bump to his fantasy value. Lohrei is pretty low rostered. He's probably going to be on Power Play 1 because he was on Power Play 1 earlier on in the year. So if you are in desperate need for a defenseman, definitely take a look. Some more updates here. Nico Hischier is a full participant in practice. He is hoping to play Saturday. Very good news if you own Hischier. We also have two players on the Pittsburgh Penguins, Brian Russ and Evgeny Malkin, full participants in practice, expected to return Saturday. Brian Russ is still under rostered in my opinion. Certainly worth a look. With the Columbus Blue Jackets, we have Marchenko and Boone Jenner being full participants in practice. And we sort of expected this with Jenner. We got, rumblings that he was starting to skate, that he was on track to return sometime in late February. But this is actually a pretty early return for Marchenko if he decides to play Saturday. It's not confirmed yet, but regardless, Marchenko is going to be returning very soon. So if he was dropped in a more shallow league, definitely take a look. Now, in terms of Boone Jenner, it looks like he's going to be in the top 6 as of right now, but unsure if he's going to be Power Play 1. Obviously, when everybody's healthy, it's Monahan, Marchenko, Voronkov, Ken Johnson, and Werenski. But right now, we do have some injuries. So could he be Power Play 1? Maybe. But I think it's unlikely. The reason I say this is because Voronkov is the net front player on Power Play 1. He has that chemistry with Marchenko and Monahan. I know Monahan has not returned yet. But considering Voronkov has been on this Power Play 1 for the entire year, and Boone Jenner is typically as the net front player on this power play, I would expect them to keep Voronkov on this first unit. Now, regardless of this, guys, Boone Jenner is still a stud in fantasy because he puts up elite shots, hits, and blocks. Maybe this injury might have him stepping back from doing that, but historically, he's been very good in the peripheral department. So if you're in a category league or in a points league that is sort of bangers heavy, weighted like a bangers league, please take a look at Boone Jenner. He is definitely worth a look. Some other updates here. Valeri Nichushkin, he is back skating, but we got a quote from Jared Bednar that it is still too early to determine which game he will be back. So that's not the most promising sign in terms of the hope that he was going to return right after the break. So considering this quote, I would imagine that he'd be back sometime in early to mid-March. And I still think he's worth a stash, depending on your league size, of course. We also have Connor Zary of the Calgary Flames being a full participant in practice. Don't think he's going to be power play 1. I think he's going to be in the top 6. He's not a guy that puts up amazing peripherals. So yeah, not super exciting, but in a deeper league, he could be worth a look. Another update here, Igor Shesterkin, he practiced, I believe, yesterday or the day before, but it was only for 30 minutes. I'm sure he's just ramping it up. He's going slowly. The injury that we got, or the update on his injury when he was first injured, is that it wasn't serious. It was only supposed to be a 1 to 2 week thing. So not too concerned. If he does miss, the first couple of games back, that's probably all that's going to happen, right? A couple of games and then he's back. We'll see what happens and how he progresses in practice. We also have a few more updates with the Ottawa Senators. Josh Norris and Shane Pinto will be returning soon. We don't have an exact game or date when they're going to be returning, but there is a chance that they return Saturday. So something to keep an eye out for. With the Vancouver Canucks, Quinn Hughes, he's still not medically cleared. He was trying to get to Boston to play in this USA versus Canada game. But regardless of him not being technically medically cleared, he shed his non-contact jersey and skated in that non-contact jersey. So I would imagine he's pretty close to returning, and probably within the next week or two, he should be back. Another Vancouver Canuck update pertains to Thatcher Demko. Demko was injured just before the break, and we learned just recently that he will not be joining the Canucks on their upcoming 5-game road trip. So right now his designation is week to week, and that means if you need a goalie, you should take a look at Kevin Lankinen. I also want to mention for the Utah Hockey Club, Sean Jersey is returning. If you're in a deeper league, he could be a good ad, but in a more shallow league, probably not. I don't expect him to be power play 1, but he'll still be solid if you're in a league that doesn't heavily value peripherals. He puts up okay blocks though, so yeah, something to consider. And Logan Cooley is currently day-to-day, so not sure if he's going to be returning this weekend, but he should be returning soon. The last update here is about Seth Jones. We've heard rumblings that, he's on the trade block. They are looking to move him. He wants to be moved. And we got confirmation in a news article that he's working with the Blackhawks and his agent to potentially get moved to a contending team. Now, this is not the best news for Seth Jones owners, in my opinion. On the Blackhawks, he gets power play 1 time. He's getting like 25 minutes a game. He is heavily utilized, but on a more, playoff-ready team, a contending team like the Dallas Stars, a team that is rumored to be involved with potentially trading for Seth Jones, you're probably not going to see those type of minutes, and you're probably not going to see power play 1 either. So obviously not a big fan. We will see what happens if a team even wants to eat up some of that big $9.5 million contract. But regardless of this, if he does get moved, this means that Alec Vlasic is going to see a pretty significant fantasy bump, because we did see Vlasic play very well when Jones was out. Vlasic, he was power play 1. He was getting a ton of minutes, but unfortunately for him, when Jones came back, he was back down to power play 2, getting like 22 minutes a game. So, if you're in a very deep league and you need a defenseman, Vlasic could be a good speculative ad. I wouldn't rush out to add him in a more shallow league, but definitely keep an eye out on the situation and what happens with Seth Jones. Also, guys, I wanted to edit in one thing. Matthew Tkachuk only played 1 period last night against Canada. What a win by Canada, by the way. Incredible game, as you guys know if you watched. But what we know is that Matthew Tkachuk is injured. He couldn't play in what he called the biggest game of his career, and that's definitely concerning. We don't have any updates just yet, but Brady Tkachuk said in an interview that he doesn't think it's too good. So something to keep an eye out for if you own Matthew Tkachuk. Very disappointing. He's been on fire for the last 2 weeks in the regular season. And I guess the player that you might want to take a look at is Sam Bennett. Bennett obviously puts up really good peripherals, but if Matthew Tkachuk's out, Bennett will be on power play 1. So definitely take a look at Sam Bennett if we get news that Tkachuk is out long term. Now let's talk about the buy low forwards. These are players that I think you are going to get a discount on in a trade currently, and I do think that they should be bouncing back and have a pretty solid rest of the year. Starting off, we have Auston Matthews. He is currently on pace for 41 goals. That is the lowest goal pace since the 2018-2019 season. If you're looking at his shooting percentage, he's rocking a 12.4% shooting percentage compared to a 15.9% career rate. Could see some regression to the mean there. And also, his on-ice shooting percentage has been pretty low as well. It's the lowest since the 2019-2020 season. Now, do I have some concerns about Matthews potentially not being 100% healthy? Yes, I do, right? Matthews, he was dealing with an injury. He sat out a number of games. And what we were told about that injury is that this is a season-long thing that he is going to have to deal with. So, yeah, I mean, I don't really know. We don't have a lot of details about what he was dealing with and if he's dealing with it now. But in general, if Matthews is playing and he's healthy, I don't expect him to be at a 41 goal pace. No, I expect him to score more goals. I expect him to perform better. So if you can get a discount on a player like Matthews, you should definitely trade for him. Another player that we have to talk about is Mikko Rantanen of the Carolina Hurricanes. Now, I want to preface this with saying that he's not going to be as good as he was on Colorado. There's no question about it, right? He's getting like 4 less minutes of ice time per game or whatever it is, and that is going to impact his fantasy production. That is a fact. Regardless, though, Rantanen has been snake bitten so far on the Canes. Throughout 6 games on the Canes, Rantanen only has 1 goal and 1 assist. Definitely not the start that he wanted. And during the stretch, his shooting percentage is 4.8%. So, in my opinion, he has been snake bitten. This is compared to a 16.1% career average, guys. So, I'm expecting the shooting percentage to regress to the mean. We can also look at his on-ice shooting percentage on the Canes, 4.48%. So, it's not only him that's not been able to put the puck in the net, but also his line mates. If you're expecting Rantanen to be the 50 goal scorer, 110 point player that he was playing as when he was on Colorado, then you're probably going to be disappointed. But if you're able to get a discount on a frustrated Rantanen owner, I think it's going to pan out in the long run. Another buy low forward is Brady Tkachuk of the Ottawa Senators. Tkachuk is only on pace for 64 points, which would be the lowest since the 2020-2021 season. Definitely disappointing so far. And ultimately, this lack of production has come from his 5v5 numbers. The power play has been great for the Senators, but 5v5, Tkachuk has not produced as we expected him to produce. Right now, Tkachuk is a 4.46 5v5 shooting percentage. That is not sustainable. I'm expecting that to bounce back. And also, his on-ice shooting percentage, 5v5, has been pretty low as well, 6.35%. Tkachuk is also rocking the lowest IPP of his career. There is a chance that he is just getting unlucky here. He is just snake bitten. And there is a chance that for the rest of the season, he bounces back. Tkachuk already has an extremely safe floor with his shots and hits, depending on your league settings, of course. But with the potential bounce back, I'm a huge fan of trading for Brady Tkachuk, and I think he is going to have a really good second half of the year. Another buy low forward I'm a big fan of is Matt Boldy of the Minnesota Wild. I wanted to do a buy low video before he had that 3-point night. But yeah, in the last game, he had 3 points. Maybe the window is closed a little bit. Like a Boldy owner might have seen that and said, no, I'm going to hold on to him. I get it. But in my opinion, he is still buy low. Boldy only has 2 goals in the last 10 games. And right now, he is rocking the lowest shooting percentage of his career, that being 10.4% compared to a 12.1% career average. Unfortunately, Boldy has been snake bitten, especially even strength. He has a 7.46 5v5 shooting percentage. I'm expecting this to regress to the mean. And we also have to talk about the fact that the Wild have dealt with a lot of injuries. Joel Eriksson Ek has dealt with multiple injuries. Kaprizov obviously has been out and is not expected to be back until sometime in March. And this is obviously going to hurt Matt Boldy. Now, the one positive thing about this is that when everybody is healthy, this will benefit Boldy, right? Kaprizov, hopefully he is back sometime early in March, mid-March, just in time for your fantasy playoffs. And in these fantasy playoffs, the Wild have a fantastic schedule. It depends on your schedule, of course, but week 24, which could be your finals week, the Wild have 4 games and 4 off nights, which is absolutely fantastic. So that alone makes you want to trade for Matt Boldy, but also the other things that I mentioned as well. I do expect him to bounce back. I do expect him to finish off strong, and he is definitely one of my favorite buy low players. Another one of my favorite buy low forwards is Carter Verhaeghe of the Florida Panthers. Yes, he has played pretty well in the last 10 games. He had that hat trick, but on the season, he is still underperforming, and we know that all throughout the year, he has been snake bitten. Right now, he is on pace for 21 goals, which is the lowest since his rookie season. He has an 8.5% shooting percentage compared to a 13.8% career rate. That is the lowest ever for him. And guys, as of late, he's been put back on line one with Alexander Barkov and Sam Reinhart. That was a big concern I had with Verhaeghe. I always thought he was going to bounce back, but he was on line three with Jesper Boquist and Eetu Listerainen. So that definitely didn't inspire a lot of confidence in me. I was concerned about it, but since being put on that top line again, he has performed great, and that line has played fantastic. So I expect them to keep this top line together. He's line one, power play one. The stats say that he has been snake bitten for the entire season, and as long as he holds this deployment, I'm expecting a monster second half of the year. We will see what happens, but I'm definitely a fan of adding Verhaeghe if he's available in a more shallow league, or trying to trade for him to get before your trade deadline. Another buy low forward we have to talk about is Zach Hyman of the Edmonton Oilers. Obviously a very disappointing season for Hyman so far. We expected regression, but we didn't expect him to only be on pace for 52 points. And with that being said, you're probably going to get a pretty good discount on him in a deal. Now, the reason I think he's going to bounce back is that he is currently rocking the lowest IPP of his career at 41%. This could mean a number of things, but there's a very strong chance that he is just getting unlucky in this department, especially on the power play as well. I think he's getting unlucky on that man advantage. So yeah, I think he will bounce back because of this low IPP. That's one thing to consider. And in general, guys, Hyman is line one, power play one. No, he hasn't been line one all year. There's been times where he hasn't been on that line with McDavid. But as of today, he is line one with McDavid and on power play one. A player that's getting the type of the deployment that he's getting with the best player in the world shouldn't be on pace for 52 points. We've seen what he has done in Edmonton, and I'm expecting him to have a very good finish to the year. The next buy low forward is Joel Eriksson Ek of the Minnesota Wild. This has to be one of my favorites. He is currently only on pace for 46 points. Very disappointing stuff. He has a 7.6% shooting percentage compared to a 9.9% career rate. Could see some regression to the mean there. Very low on his shooting percentage as well. Lowest since the 2019-2020 season. Lowest IPP of his career. He's dealt with injuries. The Wild have dealt with injuries on their blue line, and then also with Kaprizov. And like I mentioned in the Boldy section, the Wild have one of the best playoff schedules. Week 24, having 4 games and 4 off nights. Just imagine in your fantasy playoffs with Joel Eriksson Ek bouncing back, the Wild healthy, potentially on an even strength line with Kaprizov, on that power play, putting up shots, putting up hits. There's still a lot of potential with this player. He's definitely been dropped in some leagues, and I guarantee that you're going to get a big discount on him in a trade. So yeah, definitely one of my favorite buy low forwards. Also, guys, I wanted to add in one player I forgot to talk about. That player being Kirill Kaprizov of the Minnesota Wild. Obviously, there's going to be some risk with him being injured. He had surgery, and on February 1st, we were told that the timeline was a minimum of 4 weeks. This means the earliest he can come back is at the beginning of March. Probably not going to be that early. It's probably going to be mid-March. And the risk that I mentioned earlier is that he could have a setback, right? There's no guarantee that he comes back at the timeline that was suggested. Ultimately, we know how good Kaprizov is. He's legitimately a top 3 player in the NHL this year. And you might be able to get a discount on him because he is injured. He's sitting on the IR for the person that has him in your league. And that person may be frustrated or they need immediate help. So they may be willing to trade Kaprizov at a discount, and you would be able to get him right in time for your fantasy playoffs. With that being said, guys, as I mentioned, the Wild have 4 games and 4 off nights during week 24, which could be your finals week. It depends on your playoff schedule, of course, but yeah, that would be absolutely massive, having Kaprizov for your final week, getting those 4 games and 4 off nights. Try to get creative, send some 2-for-1 trades, some 3-for-1 trades. And I do think, even though there is that minimal risk with him having surgery and not being healthy yet, it's probably going to pay off getting a player like Kaprizov just in time for your fantasy playoffs. Lastly, I want to talk about a couple of more buy low forwards, starting with Adrian Kempe of the Los Angeles Kings. On the season, it doesn't really scream buy low, but as of late, he has been underperforming. Right now, he only has 4 points in the last 10 games, a 7% shooting percentage during the stretch. There's a chance maybe you can get a discount on him considering this recent poor stretch. Another player here is Cole Caulfield. On the season, Caulfield, everything looks fine, but he's had a little bit of a poor stretch. Only 2 goals and 3 assists in 10 games, a 6.9% shooting percentage during the stretch. Potentially a discount. Try to send some trades. And 2 more players here. Drake Batherson, only 5 points in the last 10 games, a 7.4% shooting percentage during this stretch. And lastly, Pavel Buchnevich. Very disappointing season for Buchnevich, but I do think he will play better during the second half of the year. He has 0 goals in the last 13 games, only 5 assists during this stretch. And on the season, he has the lowest shooting percentage since the 2019-2020 year. I also wanted to highlight 2 buy low defensemen. The first one being Drew Doughty of the Los Angeles Kings. He is older. He's missed most of the year. So yes, there is that argument against trading for Drew Doughty. But what I do know is that in the 6 games that he's played in, he has 0 goals and 1 assist. And obviously that isn't great, but I'm not expecting that to be sustainable. So, you know, do with that information as you will. And also he's averaging 26 minutes and 57 seconds of ice time per game on power play 1 as well. So I expect the points to come. The other buy low defenseman here is Roman Josi of the Nashville Predators. Yes, I have my concerns. The 5v5 protection has not been there for Roman Josi. The Nashville Predators stink. They've had trouble putting the puck in the net all season long. I don't know what they're going to do before the trade deadline. Maybe they're going to sell some important players. Yes, those are some concerns. I get it. But I do have to address the fact that he only has 3 points in the last 9 games. And there is the opportunity to see some positive regression, even strength as well, based on what we've seen so far this year. So, yeah, I do think if you're able to get a discount on a defenseman like Roman Josi, who puts up elite peripherals, gets elite deployment, and has elite talent, it could work out. All right, next up, let's talk about these sell high players. These are players that I think are overperforming and are probably going to cool down, meaning that you could capitalize on their increased value in a trade. With that being said, a big disclaimer here that I want to say is that just because a player is a sell high doesn't mean that they won't be good long term, right? Some of these players, they could just be running hot and they're going to continue running hot. And some of them are still going to be solid. They're just going to cool down a bit. With that being said, let's start it off with Brandon Hagel of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Yes, Hagel's had insane 5v5 protection. It's so impressive what he's able to do, even strength. Not getting a lot of power play points. Recently getting taken off power play 1. It's so awesome to see him like in the top 5 in 5v5 points. Unfortunately, I do think that what we've seen from Hagel is unsustainable, and I do think he's going to cool down. Ultimately, there's just 2 things for me. The first thing is his on-ice shooting percentage, 14.9%. That is unsustainable. Maybe he can sustain it, right? There's no guarantee it's going to cool down, but I do think it will come down, and that is going to hurt his production. And the other thing is that what the Lightning were doing with their power plays is they were splitting the power plays. They had a 1A and a 1B unit. That benefits a lot of certain players. But regardless of that, they have gone back to a normal power play 1 that they run heavy usage with, and Hagel is not on that power play. So that is concerning, right? It's Chaffee on power play 1 currently, and that is going to affect Hagel if he's not on power play 1 for the rest of the year, because in the first half of the season, he was. Another sell-high player here is Rickard Rakell of the Pittsburgh Penguins. I'm a big fan of Rakell. I have him in all of my home leagues. He was going undrafted pretty much in most leagues. He just felt like insane value at his ADP. So yeah, he's been a great draft steal. But ultimately the problem with Rakell is that his numbers are not sustainable. Right now he has a 17.1% shooting percentage compared to an 11.5% career rate. So I expect this to cool down. He's rocking the highest on-ice shooting percentage of his career as well. So it's not just him that is overperforming. It's also his line mates. And another concern that I have to address here is that he has been involved in rumors of potentially getting traded, right? Like he is a guy that could be traded at the trade deadline, and that means a team could trade for him that is at the top of the standings. And typically, some of these teams are not going to have room to put him on power play 1 or on the first line either. This means that Rakell could go to a team where he's power play 2 and not getting the minutes that he's getting on the Penguins. With that being considered, and obviously the advanced stats that I mentioned earlier, in my opinion, he's a sell high. Another player here is Lucas Raymond of the Detroit Red Wings. Listen, I want Raymond to continue to perform. I drafted a lot of him on drafters. He's actually on my best team currently, which is 12th out of 5,000 teams. So I hope that he continues to have this amazing year. But unfortunately, I do worry that he is going to cool down. Don't get me wrong, I think he's still going to be solid. He's line one, power play one, getting the ice time. He looks great out there. If you watch the games that he played on Sweden as well, he looked really good. He's a talented player, but right now he's rocking a 13.73 on-ice shooting percentage. And also the power play production has been unsustainable for the Red Wings as well. He's currently on pace for 38 power play points. I'm not expecting him to finish with this number. He's still going to be solid, guys, like I said, but if you can trade him away for a player like Matt Boldy, I would. If you can trade him away or package him for a player like Brady Tkachuk, I would. And yeah, I just think in general, you want to capitalize on his increased value. Some more sell high players include Matt Duchene. Yes, he's on power play one now, which is great for his value. His ice time is still a little wishy-washy, but power play one is great. But in general, guys, he's rocking a 22% shooting percentage compared to a 13.6 career rate. And I'm just expecting him to cool down. Next up is Alexi Protas of the Washington Capitals. This has to be the most obvious sell high. 22.2% shooting percentage compared to a 10.6% career average. Almost a 16% on-ice shooting percentage. And this has sort of been the story for the Washington Capitals all season long. Extremely unsustainable goal scoring for the Capitals. And there's a chance that in these last 20 or 30 games or so that we see this regression hit. Another sell high player is Marco Rossi of the Minnesota Wild. The two things here that I want to highlight is his shooting percentage, 19.4% compared to a 14.1% career average. And also the fact that when Kaprizov returns, Rossi will not be power play one. I think we have like 8 players left, starting off with Pierre-Luc Dubois. The problem with Pierre-Luc Dubois is that he's not power play one, and like all the other Capitals players, he is rocking an extremely high on-ice shooting percentage of 14.87%. I expect the regression to hit. Another sell-high player is Anthony Cirelli. He has an 18.3% shooting percentage compared to a 14.1% career average. He's not power play one. His on-ice shooting percentage is 14% as well, so in my opinion, this is unsustainable. Another player here is Jonathan Huberdeau. The only reason he's a sell high is his goal scoring. It's not sustainable, guys. He has a 20.39% shooting percentage compared to a 12.6% career average. If he was scoring at his career rate, you know, he wouldn't be fantasy relevant, guys. So ultimately, I expect this regression to hit, and that means he's going to cool down. Another sell high player here is Mikael Granlund. This one is obvious to anyone who plays fantasy, so maybe this is just for my casual viewer base who are watching in casual leagues. But the problem with Granlund is now going to the Dallas Stars from the San Jose Sharks. He's averaging 4 less minutes of ice time per game, and he's not power play one either. So yes, he's not going to be that good. A few more players left here. Ryan Donato. Donato has had a great stretch in the last 2 weeks or so of games, but unfortunately, this is not sustainable. I mean, it's obvious, right? 13 points in the last 10 games. On the season, he has a 15.3% shooting percentage compared to a 10.5% career rate. And his on-ice shooting percentage on the year as well is 14.1%. So he will cool down. Try to sell high if you can. Another player is Ken Johnson of the Columbus Blue Jackets. 21% shooting percentage compared to a 14.2% career average. Also rocking a very high on-ice shooting percentage as well. And also Jason Zucker of the Buffalo Sabres, 19% shooting percentage compared to a 12.6% career rate, a 14.3% on-ice shooting percentage, and he's also shooting almost 41% on the power play. One last player here, we have Shane Wright of the Seattle Kraken. On the season, he hasn't been that good, but in the last 10 games, he's been producing 10 points in the last 10 games. Unfortunately for Shane Wright, this is not sustainable. He has a 28.6% shooting percentage during this stretch. His ice time is still not good, so try to sell high if you can. All right, guys, that is the end of the video. A playoff guide video is coming out very soon, within the next week or so stay tuned for that. Hit that like button if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new to the channel, and I will catch you in the next one.